Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is our third session of the Brain Health and EU Launch Forum, brought to you by UNLV. And this is a monthly lunchtime forum. And really, this is a discussion that we plan to have with all of you, with the doctors, researchers, and the faculty and UNLV, to really discuss a topic that is so important to all of us, that is brain health. So I'm your hostess and moderator. I'm Dr. Zhong. I'm a geriatric psychiatrist, the director of innovation and the Chambers Grundy Center for Transformative Neuroscience. I'm also an adjunct professor at the Department of Brain Health. So on the fourth Wednesday of each month at noontime, we, the faculties and researchers, doctors in UNLV, will be here having the lunchtime forum discussion with all of you. So feel free to have your lunch and you feel free to stand up and move around. That is really good for your brain health. You can also absorb the information better and retain that information longer. So we'll be here to talk about how to take care of your brain health and what's really new in the Alzheimer's world. And more importantly, what you can do to stay sharp and more. So we will provide some really up-to-date research information and some very practical tips and recommendations for you. And then more importantly, answer a lot of questions you may have. So feel free to use the chat box and we will do our best to answer the questions in this 1 hour session. At the end of this discussion, there will be a email showing on the screen, so you can send us your questions to that email inbox. And also please submit the topic that you might be interested in hearing in the very near future. So in the past 2 sessions, we have talked about relationship between diabetes and Alzheimer's, the metabolic health and brain health. We also address the importance of the good night's sleep, good quality sleep, and your brain health and your memory. Talked about the sleep hygiene. So we had really very engaging and interactive discussion during those 2 sessions. Today, I'm very excited to really talk about a subject that's really dear to my heart and probably to your heart. We have this kind of love and hate relationship to this topic, that is exercise, right? So we will talk about how we should get moving and stay balanced. You know, when we think about exercise, we usually think about building muscles and burning fat, losing weight, and become more energetic. That's all true. But you know what? It turned out that the physical exercise have both long-term and short-term very positive impact on the most important organ of our body, that is your brain. Research have found that exercise is one of the most important and transformative things you can do to improve your brain health, such as your learning, your thinking, your memory, your focus and reasoning, and your ability to make decisions, all of which can really help you become smarter, live healthier, and longer. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We have a fantastic panel here. Welcome all 3 ladies. So first we have Dr. Tessa Heltingham, who is an expert in cardiovascular health and exercise with a special focus on population with Down syndrome and multiple sclerosis. She conducts research on how exercise can help your brain and body healthy. So very important. We have Amanda Oz. She is our graduate student, a very young neuroscientist in cellular and molecular brain research laboratory and translational biomarker discovery laboratory. A mouthful, very cool scientist. Amanda's research is focusing on identifying and investigating biomarkers in Alzheimer's disease, including the relationship between inflammation, immune response, and Alzheimer's, which are very important. We'll be talking about that as well in the context of the importance of physical exercise. We also have Dr. Jane Nash. Dr. Nash is one of the very few board-certified neurological physical therapist. She's an assistant professor at the Department of Physiotherapy at UNLV. Dr. Nash is also a movement specialist with expertise in physical activity for individuals with neurological and vestibular dysfunction. In addition, she also focused on fall prevention, fall risk identification, and treatment among the older adults. So today, we will be talking about how exercise can really help with your brain health and the science behind that. What kind of exercise might be more suitable for you? It's not one size fits all, right? And how often and how frequent? Those are the questions we got all the time. And what kind of exercise will be good for me? And also that Dr. Nash will address on the importance and a lot of practical tips on how to reduce fall risk and stay balanced. So at the end of this 1 hour discussion or forum, you will walk away not only with some really cool scientific information, some terminologies, but you will also be equipped with tools, practical tips, and recommendations to keep you stay sharp, get moving, and stay balanced. So on that note, I'm going to turn to our panelists. Again, feel free to send the questions through the chat box. I'm going to start with Dr. Heldingham first. Tell us why we should exercise and why is it so important?
Well, exercise benefits us in a number of different ways. So I think we're all familiar with the physical benefits of exercise, where you lose your weight, you can build your muscles, and you can strengthen your whole body, your core, and you can work on your endurance. But at the same time, what is happening physically is also that your whole energy metabolism is working better. So you're better at using your energy, you're more efficient at using your energy, and your storage is being used more wisely and efficiently. So it really is improving not just some of the physical features, it's also improving how your body works. And then secondly, and I think not everybody is always aware of that, exercise has a lot of emotional benefits. So exercise has been shown in many, many studies to actually reduce the risk of depression and anxiety and to reduce stress. It actually makes you sleep better. So that ties in with our last open lunch forum. But it really is helping your whole overall mental health, both for people who are just want to stay in a mentally health place or people that struggle with that. So physical activity and exercise can actually have a really strong effect on that. And then lastly, the cognitive effects of exercise are also really well demonstrated over the past couple of decades. So exercise has actually shown to reduce cognitive decline when you're aging. So everybody with aging experiences to some extent cognitive decline, and physical activity and exercise can actually combat that and can prevent that from happening or delay the onset of that happening. With that, people who are physically active also have a lowered risk of Alzheimer's disease. And I think that's a really important topic for today, because that really affects your brain health. And that is really one of the things that we would love to prevent or delay from happening with exercise. On top of that, with exercise, you decrease your tiredness, which also decreases your risk of falls and decreases your or increases your cognitive function with that, because you can stay more alert and you're able to do your daily tasks better. So there's really a whole lot of different ways to look at exercise and how it can benefit both you in different domains of life.
Well, thank you. Sounds like there's tremendous benefit of exercising. I think perhaps all of us are quite aware of the detail. You know, sometimes people exercise just want to feel better. We know that we want to get stronger. But I think it's quite interesting. You talk about exercise can also help with our overall cognition and also reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. I wonder, what are the scientific data or evidence supporting that? What do we know about that?
Well, we know that if you exercise acutely after exercise, you actually have improved memory already, and your cognitive function is immediately better after exercising. And
so should we go and exercise before like a big presentation or before a big test? would that be something that the scientists or doctors would recommend? Because
Yes.
it sounds like the memory will be better.
Yes, and they actually recommend that for people of all ages. So they recommend that for children in schools and for adolescents, but for all ages, it's important to involve or integrate enough physical activity in different bouts in your life, and that will actually improve your cognitive function and your ability to retain new information. Yes.
I understand there are some data also showing that even for the student in high school, if they actually have done exercise compared to those who didn't, they tend to score about 20 or 30% better in their final exam. It's quite extraordinary in terms of the immediate impact of the exercise. You also touched upon a little bit of long-term. What about long-term? So should we just keep on exercising so that that particular effect will be long-lasting?
Mm-hmm. That is exactly right. So the effects that you see after a short bout of exercise actually sustain if you do that more often and more for a longer period of time. So what we see in studies that after a month of exercising, you actually see improved memory, attention, and processing speed that retain not just right after exercise, but throughout your day. So it really has a strong effect on cognitive function throughout. And just like your muscles get stronger from exercise, actually your brain gets stronger too, in a sense. So your muscles get stronger because there's more blood flow going to those muscles and you're better at using oxygen and nutrients. So you improve that with exercise. And the same thing happens to your brain. So you're actually improving your blood flow to your brain and you're improving your ability of your brain to use oxygen and nutrients to work because you're actually training your brain just as much.
That really does make sense, doesn't it? I think we understand the building the muscle, but I think that's the same idea, building your brain strength as well. We have a very relevant question. Thank you, Joe. So the question is, does the intensity of exercise have an impact on cognitive function? Great question.
That is a great question. There's a little bit of difference here for acute effects and long-term effects. So for acute effects, if you want to improve your memory or your cognitive function, like right after your exercise, doing really, really vigorous or heavy exercise is not going to help. So doing light or moderate activity is really most helpful for the acute effects. Vigorous activity can really help train your muscles and train your whole body on the long term. So there's no reason not to do that to get those effects long term. But immediately after a maximal exercise, you would probably not be at your best because you're just really tired.
So tired. That makes sense. So thank you for that. You just touched upon a very important aspect, that is the improve the blood flow, improve the use of oxygen to your brain. I think that's part of a little science behind that. I'm going to turn to Amanda, our scientist here, to share with us a little bit of theory behind how, from the research and basic science perspective, the exercise is really good for your brain and for your brain health.
Yes, so when we think about exercise, we're thinking about the blood flowing throughout the body, and that's providing the muscles with lots of oxygen and nutrients, as we just talked about. This is actually happening in the brain as well. So that you really need to get your blood flowing into your brain. The brain makes about 2% of your body, but we take about 15% of the blood flow to your brain. So it does require a lot of this. And this is because the neurons or brain cells in your brain need oxygen to be able to provide energy and communicate with each other. So this helps strengthen your cognition and your memory because you're getting these nutrients and oxygen to your brain cells. This can also reduce things like vascular dementia and stroke. So vascular dementia is very common. It affects about 1/3 of individuals over the age of 70. So right after Alzheimer's disease, this is the most common type of dementia. And this is due to the reduced blood flow in the brain, your brain not getting enough of this oxygen and nutrients. And stroke happens when this gets completely cut off. So exercise is really good to reduce the risk for vascular dementia and stroke, provide enough energy and oxygen for your brain cells to communicate, and help with cognition overall.
Well, thank you for that. I think, is there a question? Okay, so that's amazing, isn't it? So our brain is only about 2% of our body weight, yet it actually takes about up to 20% of the entire oxygen consumption of our body. So for the brain, in order for the brain to properly function, obviously we have to have enough oxygen. We have to have the blood flow. But also I think there being a lot of discussion about inflammation. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that from the inflammatory perspective, how exercise can help the brain to fight the potential underlying pathological processes and starve off some of the attack from external environment and then keep our brain healthy.
Yeah, definitely. So inflammation happens when your body is trying to take care of yourself. So like when you cut yourself, you see it get red and puffy, and a lot of the cells are trying to repair themselves. The same thing happens in the brain. So inflammation in the brain is very important to keep your brain healthy. However, a lot of the times in neurodegenerative diseases, there's this chronic effect happening where the inflammatory response doesn't really shut down when it's supposed to. So this leads to things like neuronal cell death, cognitive decline, and overall neurodegeneration. So this is very common in Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, MS, ALS. So this is really common, but exercise overall can actually decrease this inflammatory response that's happening. So it's really amazing that it can turn down this inflammatory response that's having all these negative effects. In Alzheimer's disease specifically is where my research kind of lies, and it can reduce the pathologies that are actually leading to this disease when you exercise. So it is really important to exercise to reduce this risk of neurodegenerative diseases.
So exercise in a sense is really anti-inflammatory, isn't it?
Yes.
We also heard early on in terms of people's experience of having the runner's high. You feel really good after intense exercise. I think a lot of us may have that particular experience. You feel really good after you're working out. So what happened in our brain when we were working out or right after we were working out? There must be some kind of a chemical inside our brain, isn't it? What happened to those chemicals?
Yes, it's pretty amazing how quickly you can feel the effects of exercise through this immediate response of mood changes. And this is happening due to the release of signaling molecules known as neurotransmitters, which is just a fancy word for signaling molecules that are activating different pathways. And this includes things like serotonin, it makes you really happy feeling, and dopamine, which rewards you. You feel rewarded after the release of these. So the exercise can actually increase the release of both of these types of neurotransmitters. Exercise can also actually increase the binding sites or the receptors that these molecules bind to as well. So overall, it increases your chances of feeling good on these pathways or through these pathways. Exercise also releases things like endorphins and reduces the stress hormone. So it reduces pain and relieves stress. And that's why you feel this really good euphoric state of this runner's high is due to all of these different chemicals that are in play being released when you exercise.
So I think that's part of the science behind what we all know. Exercise helps us feel better. Exercise helps us combat anxiety and depression, even at times sleep disorder. And there is really science behind it. There is a chemicals release. There is an increased production of those very important neurotransmitters. I just want to add to that, Amanda. I think there are also a lot of research showing that exercise also stimulate the growth or new growth of the nerve cells. I wonder if you can touch upon on that as well, just briefly.
Yeah, definitely. So as you mentioned, it can stimulate the growth of new cells. And this is really important when we're talking about things like neurodegenerative diseases, but also important when you're talking about things like aging, where over time these brain cells are breaking down or are reducing. There's actually overall shrinkage of the brain when we age as well. So increasing or exercising increases the amount of new cells being grown and increases the size of these regions that are involved in cognition, learning, and memory.
So as we're aging, our muscles tend to shrink, and so is the brain size. That's part of the healthy aging process. So we are not the same when we are in our 50s and 60s compared to the way how we were 20s and 30s, the way how we can run, the way how we can compete. Same thing with our brain. So there are changes. However, as Amanda just pointed out, through exercise, which we're going to talk in just a few minutes, the type, intensity, and so forth, you can actually slow down the shrinkage of your brain. And also that there are some very important scientific information showing that it can actually increase the size of part of your brain called hippocampus. That is really one of the critical part of the brain, which is responsible for the formation and the storage of the memory. So that exercise can not only help you feel better physically and emotionally and mentally, it can actually help to grow your brain and help you to stay healthier and stay sharper. So I think that's so important for us to keep that in mind. So when you are exercise, not only you're building your muscle, but you're building your brain as well. Isn't it, Amanda, from a scientific perspective?
Definitely. It's amazing how much exercise affects your brain in such a positive way.
Right. So we have a question from Telvi, talk about what kind of exercise that you would recommend for older person who struggle with memory, but is it limited in their movement? Again, great questions. I'm going to turn that to Dr. Nash. Just share with us what kind of exercise that people should do. Obviously, we are all at different physical conditions, may have some physical limitations. There's also age differences. Help us to really gain some understanding, please. What kind?
Sure, thank you. I'd love to. Everyone, there are so many different types of exercises. I'd like to help us just break them down a bit and talk about 4 different types. There is endurance or aerobic exercise. There's also strength exercises, balance exercises, and flexibility exercises. And all of these different types of exercise can benefit your body, your mood, and your brain health. First, talking about aerobic exercise. Aerobic means with oxygen. So it's exercise that increases our heart rate, increases our breathing rate, and allows us to bring in more oxygen. And that oxygen fuels all that we've talked about today. Those type of exercise, aerobic exercise, can be as simple as brisk walking, maybe sweeping your floor or mowing your lawn. If we just talk about brisk walking with intensity levels, we're looking for you to have about 100 steps a minute. Other times people talk about intensity on a scale from 0 to 10, and the recommended intensity is really that 4 to 6 range, moderate intensity. So that's something all of us can do, or at least work up to being able to do. And that's just important that you know that you start where you're at, and with consistency, our body improves. Another type of exercise that's very important is strength exercises. We lose our muscle strength as we age, and so we need to work on that. We need to use weights or resistance bands to help our muscles regain the power they might once have had. And so we do that twice a week. We recommend days off in between so our muscles can rest. But we really want to work our major muscle groups, so that being our chest, our back, our arms, legs, as well as calves and core in strength exercises. Now, that's a lot of different muscle groups. So we really recommend doing multi-joint exercises, maybe doing some squats, some lunges, maybe some overhead presses, to knock several out at a time. You can also incorporate Tai Chi exercises and yoga, which will help bring into our routine that flexibility. That flexibility is very important to maintain our range of motion or our muscles length, right? So that we can move how we've always moved. As we start to get less movement, we start to have difficulty even with our balance. Maybe we turn and look over our shoulder and we start to have more instability. So doing activities like yoga or Tai Chi can not only help improve that length of our muscle, but it can also improve our balance. Balance is that fourth category that I wanted to talk about with physical activity, because we also lose our ability to balance as we age. In fact, 1 out of 4 older adults, so that's those older than 65, 1 out of 4 older adults fall each year. And so we really want to have all of you think about incorporating balance exercises into your daily routine. Maybe trying to stand on one foot for even up to 30 seconds. If you can stand on one foot, but without holding on, that's great. Maybe you'll have to hold on initially, but if you stay consistent at it, that's something you can improve. So, Dr. Kate, there's a wide range of exercises that people can do. And what's most important, I think, is that they do something. And oftentimes it's best that they do something that they enjoy, because consistency is so important in allowing us to not only develop the strength, the endurance, the balance, but to maintain it.
Well, this is so helpful. Thank you, Dr. Nash. I think that you categorize the type of exercise in 4 groups, right? So aerobic, basic cardiovascular, and strength, weight training, the flexibility, and the balance. I think that there's just so much information out there, so helpful, but at the same time, I think might be overwhelming to some people. How often should you do that, and what kind you should be doing that? So are there information or any resource and link people can go on that particularly for beginners, they can get started, then they can slowly build their own exercise routine? Are we providing any specific guideline, or is there a nationwide guideline that we can share with our audience?
Yes, thanks for asking. And so we did provide, hopefully, everyone in this conversation with some helpful links, because it is a lot of information. And what we really want to encourage all of you to do is keep moving every day. And so we want to give you resources that can help you do that, and do that safely. So there are a few links that I've provided. One is from the CDC, which we are all very familiar with these days, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And they have a great link, a program called My Mobility. And it really helps people start planning what they want to be able to do and what they need to do to maintain doing those activities that they want. So that is one great link we've given them, but we've also given them another link to a long PDF that can really step through the process as they need it to incorporate aerobic exercise into their day. Also gives them guidance on strength exercises, flexibility exercises, as well as those all-important balance exercises. So those links are available. I think we've emailed everyone so that they have that information.
So if you don't have it, you can send your email to the email inbox we're going to be showing in the end. Then we can keep you on our mailing list email. We can keep you up to date in terms of our series, as well as a resource information as well. So just for our audience, Dr. Nash, I want to know what kind of exercise you practice.
Well, I do like a variety. I try to practice what I preach, and so I tend to mix it up, actually. I like to swim. I like to run. Sometimes I do a walk with my family to get that exercise in. And I also do strength training and flexibility exercises. So I do as well, mix it up and make sure that I'm doing something active every day.
I think you've been very modest so that Dr. Nash is actually a very avid athlete. She competes in triathlon. So she's on one end of the spectrum. I'm looking at the four ladies here. I'm probably on the other end of the spectrum because I don't like gyms. I think some of you might be able to identify with me here. I sign up gym membership. I cannot go there. It's too crowded. I think everybody looks so good. I look really dumb. I don't like it at all. So I have to find a way that was suitable for my lifestyle. I walk my dogs, for example, right? So I think that I really enjoy the nature. I do that. I have a home gym so that I get on the treadmill from time to time. I know I need to do that more often, 5 times a week. So that's one of the next step, the goal. And doing going upstairs and downstairs actually is a great way in terms of speeding up your heartbeat and then improve your cardiovascular health and therefore improve your brain health. And we know a lot of scientific evidence showed us that what is good for your heart is also very good for your brain. So keep that in mind. I guess my point here is that not everyone can afford a gym membership and not everyone has a very easy access to or can afford a trainer. Not everyone can go through a very formal training, but we can all get up and walk, right? We can all try to stand up on 1 foot at a time. We can all try to go upstairs and downstairs. And so I think there are ways in which that you can start to incorporate the physical exercise in part of your lifestyle. So and also make sure it's enjoyable. So if it's a chore, then you're dragging your feet every time, not in a healthy way, then you don't do that. So try to give yourself some award every time when you actually did that, or when you accomplish a small and little goal, one step at a time, taking baby step, and then that will be the way to go. I wonder, Amanda and the Helden Camp, what kind of exercise do you two do? Do you want to share with our audience?
I do a variety of exercises too. So I really enjoy walking, especially since the weather is so much nicer now here in the area. I do strength exercises, but most of all, I like to dance. So that's a very unspecific exercise, but it actually works everything. So I think for people as a tip to find something that you like, I think that is really, really important. And sometimes it's not thinking about what activity you would like, but sometimes it's thinking about what you want to get out of it. So what I really like is being outside. So anything that I can do outside, I'll enjoy that. Well, what I really like is doing it together with someone or doing it together with other people. And then it doesn't really matter what kind of activity I do, I will always enjoy those types of activities. So sometimes thinking about it in a little different way may give you other ideas or new inspiration to think about activities. And I think the COVID pandemic has taught us a whole new range of ways to be creative with physical activity in your house and in your personal environment. And I think the example of going for a walk, you can get a lot out of that if you're like walking a different round, or if you're walking your round but in a reverse way, or if you're bringing some weights. Like there's a lot of different ways to provide some variation in the activities that you're comfortable doing.
That's great. I wonder, Dr. Nash, can you comment a little bit in terms of how do people gauge the intensity of their aerobic exercise? By that, I mean, depending on the age and gender, there are certain guidelines with regard to what would be the target zone for their heart rate so that they can help to gauge their overall intensity of exercise.
Yeah, I agree with you that everyone is going to be different depending on where they're at physically. And so what we like to use is a rate of perceived exertion. And so that's a scale from 0 to 10. 0 would be not exercising at all, you're sitting on the couch. 10 would be an exercise that makes you feel like you can't breathe anymore. And we really want people to be exercising in that moderate range. So if they are thinking about how hard is this exercise for me, how how fast is my heart beating? You know, how hard is it for me to breathe? We want them thinking about a number between 4 and 6. And that really puts them at that moderate intensity.
That's very
And
helpful.
yeah,
And
I also
another
like that tip about, you know, just counting how many steps you take in a minute. And I think that's something that everyone can do if they're out taking a walk, trying to get that 100 steps in a minute. And that's something always we can work up to, right? But that's something that keeps us going and gives us a target anyway.
maybe another way of sort of gauging that intensity might also be that you're still able to talk, even though your breathing can increase a little bit. So if you notice your breathing increasing a little bit, that's great, but not over the point that you're not able to talk anymore. So that would also be another way of just getting an idea of where you're at.
So comfortable talking still.
Yes.
Not so out of breath.
Yes.
I think that as we are all getting ready and looking forward to Thanksgiving tomorrow, there will be a lot of a dessert on the table, a lot of food. So I want everybody keeping in mind and what we just talked about today. After the dinner or lunch, rather than sitting on the couch watching the football, 3 hours nonstop, get up, stand up. Even if you don't want to walk out, you can stand up and stretch and move around while you're watching the football game. That's a baby step you're taking, right? I can see some people nodding their heads. So I think that's why it's important. You make a little change at a time, build this into your lifestyle. That will be a good starting point. I know that we talked a little bit about the overall difference between men and women and age, in terms of the intensity of the exercise might be different. There is also some people or group of people who may have physical disability, who may have some other limitation. I wonder if you guys can talk a little bit about what will be available for those people and how should they gauge the way how they should exercise.
There's actually space in the recommendations, the guidelines for people who have disabilities, either physical disabilities or chronic conditions that would limit their ability to be physically active. And really the main thing to remember is that any activity counts. So from wherever you are right now, just increasing with any kind of activity is already going to improve your health, your body, and your brain. So that is something to consider. You don't always have to meet all those guidelines to actually get the benefits of increasing your physical activity. And then for people with chronic conditions or disability, the guidelines state within your ability to have the same goals as for the whole general population. So the same goals in terms of the 30 minutes a day for physical activities, and the same goals for doing strength training and balance activities twice a week. So that doesn't really change, but within your ability and if for some particular patient populations with guidance of your physician or practitioner.
Thank you. I love this question from Jessica. Would you happen to know the minimum amount of exercise you should be getting per week to affect your brain positively? The minimum. I think a lot of people have that in their mind. So Dr. Nash?
Yes, the minimums, right? So the minimum for any adult as far as physical activity, specifically aerobic exercise, is 150 minutes a week. And that's, I think, where we get the guideline of 30 minutes a day. We think about that broken up over 5 days of the week. So trying to at least build up to that 30 minutes, 5 days a week would be getting yourself at that minimum guideline.
Thank you for that. I think sometimes it might be even hard for people to do that 5 days a week. I think there are some studies showing that if people actually focus on exercise on the weekend, still put in 150 minutes versus people do that 5 days a week, the impact are fairly similar. So I think that's probably also good news for people who are extremely busy during the weekday, but they have more time on the weekend to devote to their exercise routine.
Yeah.
Dr. Nash, we talked a little bit about the balance, and can you help us to understand the risk of the fall and how people can stay balanced through what kind of exercise or what kind of education?
Thank you for asking that and revisiting that, because it's so important, especially as we age. I mentioned earlier that 1 out of 4, about 27% of older adults fall each year. And 1 out of 5 of every one of those falls are going to result in some type of injury. And it's most likely a head injury or a hip fracture. And unfortunately, those injuries tend to limit our abilities and change how we move day to day, sometimes not even allowing us to stay in our homes. So we really want to work on preventing that first fall and increasing our strength through those strength exercises and balance exercises can really decrease our risk of falling. There's other programs out there to provide more education, because it's a multifactorial situation. Having your eyes checked is also important. Making sure you're wearing good shoes, getting enough vitamin D in your diet. So there's several factors to preventing falls, but working on your balance and your strength are 2 good ways that everyone can work on it starting today.
I know that your team have done quite a bit of work to do fall screening on the annual basis in the past. Are there any planned such event in the future so people can show up and to get the assessment done?
Yes, those are in the works. We are planning. I work with students every day who are eager to get out and help our community. And so I train them, and we go out and provide community fall risk screenings so people have a good understanding of where they are currently at, and can help draw awareness to risk factors that they can target and help their own self. So those will be up and coming in the new year. We usually have several of them. A lot of them tend to happen in the fall, but we look to try to increase the offerings of those. We will also provide, I believe we provided a link to a couple different tools that our participants today can use right away. One is a link to the NCOA that gives you 12 questions that you can ask yourself and start to understand your fall risk. And another is Dr. Hilgenkamp and I have a group project with our students putting together a website that can provide information about fall risk, as well as resources that can target where people identify their risk factors at.
So that's really helpful. I think that, obviously that's such an important aspect where perhaps a lot of people either are not quite aware or they don't know where they can find the resource. So thank you for providing that information. I want to come back to Amanda for a minute, if I may. Amanda, you talked about through the exercise, the brain would release or will increase the production of different kind of neurotransmitters and chemicals. I know that a lot of people have heard BDNF as a scientific terminology, and that seems to be so trending and so important in terms of our understanding of the benefit of exercise on our overall protection of the brain health. Can you share us a little bit on that?
Yeah, so this is a really common herd protein that is released during exercise. And this is kind of what we touched on a little bit with the development of new neurons or new brain cells. So the release of this that happens during exercise can help promote this increase in new cells and help with cognition. So it's involved in that pathway.
How many neurons do we have?
Oh, I should know this, but I don't know off the top of my head a lot. But it's really important that they can keep communicating with each other. And that's really, really the importance. We have a lot of them, but we have to build these connections between all of them. And exercise is this great way that building up these connections between the two is really important so that cognition is strong.
Billions and billions of neurons, nerve cells, and also all those nerve cells were connected through something called synapses, so that the exercise can also help strengthening the connection between the nerve cells. So imagine this is like a flowing on the freeway, right? So that you have all the neurons, but they have to be connected smoothly. Otherwise, there will be traffic jam. So the message, the chemicals, the signals cannot get passed through. So I think exercise not only help us to feel better emotionally, physically through the production of the dopamines and serotonins, endorphin, feel good, but it also help to stimulate the growth of new nerve cells as well as a connection of those nerve cells. So really to protect our brain. So that is a very important part that I want people to have a take-home message. So I would like to encourage people to have some questions. If you have this is such a broad area. There's just so much we can talk about. But I'd love to hear some questions from the audience. Okay, so here's a link. And any concerns, or perhaps even what kind of topic you would like to have in the future for us. Okay, so I have a loved one who has dementia. Is there anything specific that can help them? Great question. I can get started this. I'm going to invite my panelists to join. So there have been a lot of studies specifically looking at the benefit of the physical exercise patient who suffer from dementia, either mildly cognitive impaired or Alzheimer's disease. One of the most well-known study is called finger study. It's like fingers, but it really stands for the Finnish Geriatric Intervention Study. It was studied done in Finland, really looking at a 2-year multi-domain lifestyle intervention as impact on the cognition of patients who are between age 60 and 75. This was a 24-month study, which involved over almost 1,300 patients. So they divide the patient into two groups. One group received the multiple treatment, so which is a combination of physical exercise, nutrition, counseling, guidance, managing of the vascular risk factors such as diabetes and other medical condition, as well as brain training. So it's 4 major aspects. So at the end of the 2 years, what they have found was that there was a significant benefit of the combined effect on the patient's overall cognitive function, which really was characterized by their overall improvement of their speed, their executive function. By that we mean their ability to making decisions and to plan well as their speed. Speed is very important. We sometimes don't realize that when you have a faster reaction time speed, and then that's really, as one of the doctors said, the difference between letting that cup of coffee drop from your desk or catching that. So that's a reaction time and speed and memory as well. So I think that's a very important study. It's a landmark study. So right now we have a similar study in the United States. So rather than a finger, we call that pointer study. There is also a worldwide finger study that's currently underway, really, so that we want to get more people involved from all over the world to see the impact of the overall lifestyle modification on the overall cognition. So specifically on the physical exercise, and again, just to what Dr. Nash was talking about. So again, it consists of several parts. One is aerobic exercise, endurance, so that they have a physical therapist help the patient. And so this was done in the gym. for initially for 6 months, and then the patient do them in the house. They also talked about the overall balance, how they can keep balance, and strength training as well. So again, it's a strength, flexibility, balance, as well as endurance. All those are a very important part of physical exercise, and through the combination of the physical activity and physical exercise as part of the intervention of the study, it really showed that coupling with other 3 major elements of counseling and brain fitness, as well as managing muscular risk factors, they really have achieved the benefit of improving their overall cognition, including memory. So I hope that addressed some of the questions as to the benefit of a physical exercise specifically in people with dementia. And there are more studies ongoing, and there are some also very interesting studies looking at practicing yoga, for example, how that through 10-year retrospective looking at people who practice yoga versus people who did not practice yoga, the speed of those who did practice yoga, of the shrinkage of their brain was substantially slower compared to those who didn't practice yoga. So I think that's another important thing of looking at how not necessarily just aerobic exercise, but there are some other exercise as well. So that if you just cannot run, cannot do swimming, yoga, meditation will be a great way to take on as well. So I welcome other panelists comment on this question.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about, we talked a little bit about the shrinking of the brain as well in the hippocampus, that learning and memory area of the brain. And we'd have a study also that shows that 6 months of exercise can actually increase that size again in Alzheimer's disease patients. So this is important too, like we were talking, like building the connections in the brain and increasing these size responsible for learning and memory can also help.
Yeah, and I would like to just add a little comment for this person, Telvi, that she has a loved one who has dementia. Is there anything specific we can have, help them? And I would encourage, if you don't feel comfortable getting them to exercise, if there's not any physical activity that you seem to be able to get them to participate in with you, that bringing in a physical therapist is a really great idea. That is their job. They understand the different aspects of exercise and have maybe different tools they can use to motivate that person to participate in the exercise. But any exercise is good to remember that. And activity, even outside the house, can be very beneficial. Just that new environment that's very rich to the person, and creating different challenges for them, walking in different spaces can be so important and helpful to the brain, as well as the muscles and nerves, everything in the body, to be honest. So I think that if you are having difficulty getting that loved one, please think about asking your doctor to recommend a physical therapist to help you in that.
That's a great tip. I also want to add to that, that is for people who have loved ones who suffer from dementia, we know that your risk is higher of suffer from dementia in the future. So you must do everything you possibly can in your power to do everything so that you can reduce your risk of getting dementia. So there are some very, very interesting studies showing that the benefit of physical exercise is actually greater on those people who have ApoE positive gene compared to those who were ApoE negative. So what does it mean? That means people who have inherited a high risk to potentially develop Alzheimer's, they actually benefit more from exercising. So just keeping that in mind, that's a very important finding that I just want to release a message to one of our audience asking about some information to help the loved one with dementia, but also that I think is very important for you to get involved with the healthy, bring healthy lifestyle routine, and exercise is as important, if not more, for you as it's for your loved ones. I think someone has a question about sitting down for a long time every day and what might be easy exercise to do. I think that somebody typed in the answer already. So using chairs, I wonder, Dr. Nash or any of you two can comment on how you can use what you have in your office, in your home, in your workplace, break the routine and factor in part of the exercise routine in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, I think that's a great point we should bring up before ending is that we can snack on exercise. We can put it throughout our day. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes at one time, right? So if you're busy working, set a timer. Just make sure you get up maybe every 30 minutes and just stretch. Allow yourself to be in a different position. That will really help decrease any back or neck pain that you could develop, even shoulder injuries develop from too much sitting for too long at a time. So break it up. Take a walk at lunchtime. You know, try to stand and even come up on your toes or stretch out your shoulders when you're doing that intense work. But also remember so many tools you have within inside your house. You're right now videoing with us or Zooming with us. A lot of different exercise opportunities are now available, especially since COVID online. So you're able to just tap into a 10, 20-minute exercise class geared to something that you like. And that is just really helpful to fit into our so busy days, right? All of us are so busy that it's sometimes hard to think, how am I going to fit one more thing in? So think about snacking on that exercise.
Thank you. There's a question coming from Jeff who said that, he's with the Down syndrome organization. They have older members that are now showing signs of dementia and Alzheimer's. We know that almost 100% of Down syndrome patients, if they live up to the age over 30, they will almost inevitably develop Alzheimer's. So understandably, coupled with having Down syndrome, it's very difficult to get them to exercise. Any suggestions as to how they can help the family and the Down syndrome members with exercise? I think this is one of the, go ahead.
Yeah, so I really love that question, as Down syndrome is my main research focus. And I really think for older adults with Down syndrome that are experiencing dementia, the main focus is quality of life and finding activities to do together and that you can enjoy together, that it both improve quality of life and physical activity are really the best recommendation to give. Like going from not a lot of activity to going to 150 minutes a week is a big step. So really taking small snippets or snacks of exercise while doing an activity that you like to do together, like singing or dancing, or getting up from a chair together in like a sort of game that you can do with your family. There's a lot of different ways to sort of hide it in activities that are actually targeting something different, but also include some physical activity. And we actually have a science meets practice workshop tonight for the people with the Down syndrome organization, Southern Nevada, to discuss that further.
Well, thank you. This has been a very active group. We have quite a few more questions, but we are almost running out of time. Just very quickly, one question is about use of supplement. We are not going to have any time today, but that will be another very important topic that we actually will plan to have a specific session devote to the supplement in the new year. And for our next session, which is going to be on the 22nd of December, so that's the last Wednesday of this year, just a couple of days before Christmas. So as everybody is getting ready for Christmas dinner, we will be talking about nutrition and brain health. So I want to remind everyone to log in on the 22nd, just a couple of days before Christmas. So thank you all for being here today. I know that Andy has something that you want to share before people depart. I hope that you have learned something today and something very practical you can take with you. Feel free to reach out to us through the email inbox. We are here, our local, we are UNLV, so we are very proud to be part of your Brain Health Guide. to be on the journey together with you. Let's get this started, get moving, and stay balanced. Well, thank you all. Have a wonderful holiday season and have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoying spending time with your family, eating healthy, in moderation. A glass of red wine can be good for your brain health, but moderation. And try to stand up as much as you can in between. And don't sit on the couch all the time that you learned from today's session. So thank you. Have a great holiday.